in someone who doesn't conform to the script, who doesn't flatter but inspires, who doesn't submit but supports. And in that strength, they find something rare. Truth. Not perfection. Not submission. But truth. The kind that heals, that stretches, that builds something lasting. And once that's experienced, no shallow connection will ever feel the same again. Because now, the standard has changed forever. There's a powerful shift that happens when someone stops accepting the bare minimum. No longer satisfied with being an option, they decide to become the standard. That shift doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from clarity. It's the realization that love should never feel like a competition or a performance. The moment someone chooses to stop begging for attention or waiting to be chosen, they reclaim their power. Being taken for granted doesn't hurt the way it used to, because now there's a deeper understanding. Value isn't something that has to be proven, it's something that is known. That quiet confidence speaks louder than any words, and it sets a new tone. The tone is simple. If it's not mutual, it's not meant to be. People often give endlessly, hoping that one day they'll be appreciated. But pouring into someone who only takes is a recipe for emptiness. True love is reciprocal. It's not one person constantly proving their worth while the other watches. When someone finally steps back and stops overgiving, it can shock those who become comfortable with taking. That silence, that stillness, that space, it says everything. It says, I'm done convincing you. And suddenly, the dynamic changes. The person who was once distant starts noticing the absence. They start questioning their actions, because nothing bruises the ego more than realizing someone you took for granted no longer seeks your approval. Distance is not always created by anger. It's often built by disappointment. Over time, repeated neglect creates emotional walls. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. And when someone reaches that place of emotional detachment, they don't shout, beg, or blame. They withdraw. They focus on themselves. They grow. That growth can be threatening to those who relied on their compliance. Because now, the game has changed. The person they used to manipulate or ignore has become unreachable, not because of ego, but because of evolution. That kind of transformation doesn't seek revenge, it seeks peace. And in that peace lies undeniable strength. Those who once offered crumbs start to panic when they're no longer enough. They realize too late that consistency is what sustains connection, not just charm or apologies. The ones who used to make excuses now make efforts. The ones who once delayed now pursue. But by the time the shift happens, the emotional door may already be closing. That's the irony of neglect. It teaches others how to live without you. And once someone adapts to absence, they don't fear it anymore. The best place where the best feeling is concessive. The great places are not the ones that feel concessive. The best places are not the ones that feel concessive. The great places are not the ones that feel concessive. Lasting change. Life that sinks in, life is moving, life is moving. They embrace solitude, they prioritize healing, and they start rebuilding from within. And in doing so, they raise their standards, not to punish others, but to protect themselves. Some people assume they'll always be forgiven, always be welcomed back, always be loved unconditionally. But love without respect isn't real love, it's dependency. And when dependency ends, entitlement dies with it. Suddenly, the one who always waited stops waiting. The one who always checked in stops calling. The one who always made excuses for others starts holding them accountable. And that accountability feels like rejection to those who were never responsible with someone's heart. But it's not rejection. It's redirection. A path back to dignity. A path away from cycles. A path toward a future where being valued isn't a request, it's a requirement. Taking someone for granted is easy when they're always available. But the moment they stop making themselves accessible, it creates discomfort. That discomfort is a mirror reflecting behavior that was ignored for too long. It forces awareness, and awareness can lead to change if it's met with humility. But if the response is blame, gaslighting, or manipulation, it confirms the decision to walk away. No one should have to beg to be treated right. When effort has to be requested and presence has to be earned again and again, it's not love. It's imbalance. And imbalance breeds resentment. That resentment eventually turns into detachment. And once detachment sets in, there's rarely a way back. Being an upgrade isn't about status or beauty. It's about energy. It's about bringing peace, clarity, and honesty into the spaces you enter. When someone fails to recognize that, they lose access to it. And once access is revoked, desire increases. That's the paradox of loss. It wakes people up. But awareness without action is useless. Regret without growth is manipulation. If someone truly wants to return, they'll return transformed. Otherwise, they're just mourning the convenience, not the connection. And no one should have to shrink just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Growth demands more. It demands presence, effort, and emotional maturity. Those who elevate themselves naturally attract what's meant for them. They no longer chase, convince, or compete. They create space for alignment, not attachment. And in doing so, they intimidate those who only know love through control. The shift from seeking to selecting is everything. It turns the tables. Suddenly, those who once felt superior now feel uncertain. Because they're no longer the center of someone's universe. That universe has expanded. And it no longer revolves around their approval. That realization is humbling. And it's often the first step in recognizing what was lost. Not just a person, but a presence. A presence that once brought light. The ones who were once overlooked become unforgettable the moment they prioritize themselves. Not because they changed, but because they stopped allowing others to mistreat them. That shift doesn't require loud declarations or dramatic exits. It just requires consistency. Consistency in boundaries, in standards, in self-respect. And that consistency builds an aura that no ego can ignore. It either inspires transformation or triggers insecurity. But either way, it leaves a mark. Because nothing is more powerful than realizing you can love deeply without losing yourself. That's the kind of love that's rare. And rare things aren't easily forgotten. Once someone learns to never be the backup plan, they become the blueprint. The example of what self-worth looks like in action. The reminder that love without effort is not love at all. And the warning that if you treat someone like they're replaceable, don't be surprised when they're gone. Because people who know their value don't stay where they're tolerated. They go where they're celebrated. And in that departure lies a lesson. A lesson the ego may never forget. A lesson that whispers, you had everything and you lost it. Not because it wasn't enough, but because you didn't recognize it in time. When someone stops reacting emotionally and starts responding with silence, it creates a powerful shift. Silence is not absence. It's presence in its purest form. It speaks volumes, louder than anger, louder than begging, louder than tears. Silence sends a clear message that words no longer have power unless backed by action. It's the moment when the drama ends and dignity begins. That calm response doesn't come from weakness, it comes from strength. Jabu, kumirabi, sarate kumitan. Yeseru, jabu. Jabula, jabu. Jabute, jabuse. It's calm that sends the clear message. It comes from strength. It comes from this language of the heart that bounds us back into embracing life. Byabuk, Budvidi, it comes in a presence of entire from knowing that your peace is worth more than someone's attention. And in that stillness, something unsettling happens for the other person. The one who once expected chaos now finds emptiness, and that emptiness becomes their mirror. People who rely on control, guilt, or manipulation often crumble when met with emotional distance. Their tactics are designed to provoke, to get a rise, to keep someone tethered through reaction. But when those reactions stop, their influence disappears. It becomes evident that their hold was never real, it was just tolerated. And tolerance ends the moment self-worth takes over. Emotional detachment is a boundary wrapped in silence. It's a decision, not a punishment. It's the choice to protect one's mental and emotional space from recurring cycles. That quiet refusal to engage makes the manipulator feel powerless, not because of revenge, but because of release. Every time someone decides not to argue, not to explain, not to defend themselves to someone who never listened, they reclaim their energy. Emotional energy is sacred, and it should never be wasted on people who twist it into ammunition. Silence isn't cold, it's selective. It's the recognition that peace matters more than proving a point. And the moment that shift happens, the dynamic flips. The person who once had the upper hand now feels unsettled. They can't read you anymore. They can't provoke you like before. And what they mistake for distance is actually healing. Healing that doesn't require validation, only freedom. Ego depends on attention to survive. It feeds on reactions, on emotional outbursts, on being chased. So when the attention stops, ego starves. It starts to question its value, not because love was withdrawn, but because power was. Power that once came from being at the center of someone's emotional world. And when that spotlight turns off, reality sets in. The absence becomes haunting. Because it's not the same as losing affection. It's losing control. And that control was never earned. It was given freely, often at the cost of someone's emotional well-being. Silence reclaims that cost and restores balance. The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't demand anything. It simply walks away from chaos, not with anger, but with grace. It doesn't slam doors. It closes them gently and locks them with wisdom. That quiet exit leaves a louder echo than any shouting match ever could. Because it reflects emotional maturity, the kind that no longer entertains confusion. The kind that says, I've learned what drains me and I refuse to return to it. That message can't be argued with. It can't be guilted or manipulated. It just exists. Steady, unwavering, and deeply respected by those who understand real strength. In a world that's addicted to noise, silence becomes a form of rebellion. Everyone's trying to be heard, to be right, to be dominant. But the person who chooses silence over chaos sends a message that doesn't need volume. It says, I'm at peace with myself, and I won't sacrifice that for anyone. That serenity isn't easy to achieve. It's earned through experience, through heartbreak, disappointment, and the painful lesson that not every argument deserves participation. Some situations don't need closure, they need distance. And that distance becomes the doorway to self-preservation. A space where healing begins and drama ends. Emotional detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means prioritizing your well-being over someone else's instability. It means refusing to ride the roller coaster of emotional highs and lows designed by another person. It means saying, I've been through this enough to know where it leads. That kind of awareness is rare, and it's intimidating to those who counted on chaos to maintain control. Because now, their confusion tactics don't work. Their emotional traps are seen clearly, and instead of reacting, you observe, you disengage. And in that disengagement lies liberation, not just from the person, but from the pattern. Once someone stops being emotionally accessible to the wrong people, they start attracting the right ones. People who communicate with clarity instead of games, who bring peace instead of pressure, who listen instead of manipulate. A choice to reflect, to process, to respond with intention. But before that peace can be found, the noise must be blocked. And that blocking happens the moment someone realizes that protecting their peace is not selfish, it's necessary. Because not everyone deserves access to your emotions, especially those who only use them to feed their ego. There's something deeply unsettling about losing access to someone who once cared deeply. 70% of what someone cared deeply burns silently. There is something deeply unsettling about losing access to someone who once cared deeply. That shift from full attention to quiet distance feels like abandonment, but it's actually accountability. A silent reminder that you can't keep hurting people who love you and expect them to stay the same. That love, when unappreciated, eventually turns into silence, not because the feelings disappeared, but because the tolerance did. And once someone reaches that point, they don't announce it. They simply move differently. With less effort, with less urgency, with more self-respect. And that change cannot be reversed by apologies alone. It requires change, not charm. In the end, silence becomes the loudest answer to manipulation. It's the refusal to be pulled back into a cycle that never changes. It's the decision to value inner peace over temporary validation. And it's the ultimate act of strength. Because it doesn't try to win. It walks away without needing closure, recognition, or revenge. And in that departure lies dignity. The kind of dignity that teaches others how to treat you.